like we said, welcome. This is the first part one of the Rubric PD. Today, our mission and vision have to do with equity. Our vision in Bakersfield City School District is to be the model of educational excellence, equity, and innovation. So we're really going to focus on that equity piece today and equitable grading. All right, and at the core and the heart of our priorities is that equity for all students. So we really believe in that student-centered schools and really teaching the importance of self-awareness, self-management, and leading our students to that responsible decision-making. All right, our norms today are a little different. We understand it is your lunchtime and you may need to turn your camera off to eat your lunch, and that is absolutely okay with us today. We'd love to see your faces, but if not, we do understand. Please remain muted and use the chat if you need us. Be positive and patient today as we are all learning this together. And be technology ready just means have your computer ready, maybe a notepad to jot down some notes or a note page doc on your computer. All right, so our learning intention today is we will learn the rationale and first steps for using rubric grades. Today we will know we are successful when we can explain the drawbacks of traditional grading and identify an essential learning outcome for the first trimester. That's our work for today. And just to let you know, there will be a part 2, digging more into rubrics next week. Today we'll cover some for your information tips before we get started. We'll have the grading rationale, those essential learning outcomes for our first trimester, and then our next steps.
So let's get started with some FYI. And one of the things, the good news, I think, is we put it first. Aries gradebook is not going to be a K2 expectation for trimester 1. We've been working with it. It has not been easy to create. It's been a little buggy. And we know you're learning a rubric system, you're learning virtual teaching, and Aries, it was just like that one thing that was just over the edge that we thought we could remove. I don't have an answer for trimester 2 and 3, except that I will tell you that it's not going to be made an expectation until we can, 1, make it smooth and easy for you to use, and 2, give you an opportunity to be trained on it. So if you're an innovator and you want to work on Aries gradebook and explore, go for it. But if that's something you're like, hey, are you telling me one less thing to do? Let that be one less thing that you have to learn at this time.
All right. And the teacher report card committee did choose those numbers for 3, 2, and 1 for the academic indicators for grades K through 2. So that was about a 2-year process. We were looking to revamp those report cards, and teacher committees and parent committees were in on the selection and vetting of those.
And teachers really were like, we don't want to give, little kids an F. And just so you know, the report cards, there is a copy of the report cards that was sent out at the beginning of the year, and we're going to show you that document in just a little bit so you have access to look at your report card. But the headings on there are reading foundational, reading comprehension, and written expression. So those are a little different for reading and writing. Those are the headings that were chosen by the team. That's K2. And then math, social studies, science, PE, visual and performing arts are the other things that will have grades.
All right, and many of you have been asking, kindergarten will send home report cards all 3 trimesters. So for this first trimester in November, kindergarten will be sending home report cards.
And that was a request of the team as well. The teachers did not like, parents seemed to not take it seriously that they didn't get a first quarter report card. So that was one of their biggest requests. Some discrete skills will be communicated, but they will be also be part of an overall grade. So what that means, and this is especially different for kindergarten teachers, is instead of having like every single skill that you're testing like right before kindergarten, there are a few: letters, sounds, counting, but it's not an exhaustive list of things to test. So the idea is that you could kind of have records through over time. So you'll give an overall grade for reading foundational skills, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then you might also say they know this many letters and this many high frequency words. That's a kind of a change for kindergarten. So we wanted to make sure you had that we're aware of that coming up here. So with that, we're going to move on to the purpose of report cards so we can get going.
All right, so the purpose of report cards is really to communicate that information about learning over time to students and their families in order to give that guidance and set some goals of their grade level expectations. And here we have linked that grading guidebook. So there is a copy of the K through 8 report cards in that guidebook, as well as some guidance on grading and what will be graded in your specific grade level. All right, so we have a quote here. So go ahead and take a second to read the quote. How does this quote connect to the purpose of report cards that we just read? And go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself to share. So how does this quote connect to the purpose of report cards?
And I'm going to show that purpose again.
Let's go ahead and put that in the chat, or you can unmute yourself to share.
Ooh, Monica, thank you.
I just want to say that the hardest thing for a teacher is to give a low grade to a student that has great behavior, completes their work, and they try their best, and yet they're not there. To me, and also for a lot of teachers, it's hard to give a good grade to the little pill that is super smart, messes up your class, interrupts. But basically, I understand this as we are grading their skill. The parents need information on exactly where they are with their skills. It's not behavior, and that is on the rubric, I believe. We're not rewarding or compensating for good behavior or bad behavior. It's just information on their skill level.
I think that's perfectly said, yes. So, and I see those comments: guiding instruction, how children are moving, development, right? So absolutely, thank you guys. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and the first thing we want to do is make sure that we understand that rubric and what those 4, 3, 2s, and 1s mean. So we're going to kind of do a little activity here. We're going to have you read through this rubric, and there are especially this what it looks like in the classroom part. And as you read through it, jot down a word or a phrase, one for each section, that says, oh, this is the word or phrase that tells me 4. This is the one that should be emphasized so I know what a 4 means. So we're going to give you about 2 minutes to go ahead and read through that and jot down a couple of those words, one for each section, and then we'll come back and share. Okay, and that is my signal to exit present mode. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through one section at a time. And if you could add to the chat those words. So, and Nicole's going to go ahead and read them off for me, and I'm going to bold those words for emphasis. So, what words communicate a 4? What words need to be emphasized to talk about a 4? Exceeds expectations.
So far, Stephanie, we have a beyond, application, lots of beyonds. Looks like beyond an application. Anyone else for what you would highlight for number 4?
Depth, I see.
Exceeds expectations beyond what is taught.
Okay.
Consistent accuracy.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Yeah, very nice. High level, did I see? Let me make my check.
Yes, it was high level and independence.
Oh, I think that no one's called out the independence, and whoever did that, that's such an important word, I believe, for that, what it looks like in the classroom, especially for young kids. That's really when you know when they're very independent with something. Okay, so let's talk about that meets expectation. Which words tell us a student stand out for meeting expectations? A 3.
So go ahead and put it in the chat. When they meet, we have consistent, minimal errors, understand and apply, applies,
Understand. Okay.
consistent accuracy,
Excellent, and you guys are right on. They're consistent of grade. I think this of, right? It's of grade level standards rather than the beyond before, right? And they understand it. They can apply those concepts with minimal errors. Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about a 2 now. Now a 2 is approaching expectations. So which word indicate that a student is approaching expectations?
we have developing, some application, again the word some, within grade level range, additional support needed, reinforcement,
Okay. Excellent. I think that captures it. Thank you guys. And now I think one of the hardest things, I know when someone's not meeting standard, but what's the difference between a 2 and a 1? So let's take a look at those not meeting expectations. How is that different from approaching expectations?
we have varies in consistency, the support and guidance needed, academic support and guidance are needed. Varies, we have some additional time and experience. Anyone else have anything else? And the word needed as well, additional time and experience, or just needed or necessary.
I think too, when I'm looking at this, I think you guys captured it. And what stands out to me is this more reinforcement. So I think I picture like teaching a student to add, and they just need support and reinforcement to get to the point where they can add. Whereas I have a student who's a 1, they might need to learn to count before they can add. So they're going to have some other experiences and probably quite a bit more time. Like, I'm going to need to come back in a couple months after they've mastered counting, and then that addition instruction is going to work. Whereas a 2, they just need a little extra help. So great job with that. I hope that helped to clarify, you know, what this means, what these grades mean, and how they communicate and what they communicate to parents. So as we do that, and then I know someone had talked about in the chat the idea of rewarding or compensating our students, or sometimes we want it to be both. We do want to compensate our students for our hard work, but what parents want to know about the students is, how are they doing? Are they learning, and what's happening with that? With hard work, our students will do better, but really the report card, one of the mindsets we have to get out of is that transactional mindset. It's not fair to our students. So you earn this, here's your reward, here's your punishment. The report card is not the place for those kind of transactions. It's really a communication of where students are at. In the comments, should their hard work be mentioned, or their need for more work be mentioned as a point to get them to where they need to go? Absolutely. And the last thing I would add to that is just really, you know, particularly with low grades, they don't tend to motivate students to do better. They tend to demotivate students. So I am going to move on, and we're going to talk about really now kind of a traditional model and a rationale for the movement away from a more traditional model. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
So here we have Miss Frizzle and Mr. Finn's grade book. We have one student from Miss Frizzle, Keisha, and one student from Mr. Finn. So just going to take a moment to jot down, what do you notice and what do you wonder about their traditional grades?
And go ahead and hold on to those thoughts that you're jotting down, because you're going to discuss them in breakout rooms. But I want to give you one more piece of information before you move to the breakout room. So we see this assignment, plant parts, right? And we see a difference in this assignment. And we want to show you what Miss Frizzle assigned and what Mr. Finn assigned to give you just a little more information. And we're going to add the question, what do percentages and averages communicate? So take a look at that. And then I am going to go ahead and place you into breakout rooms so you can discuss the information on this slide. And when you get your invitation, go ahead and join. We'll give you probably about 3 to 5 minutes to discuss. And the left is Miss Frizzle and the right is Mr. Finn. Oops. So we have a couple robust discussions. A few people are using their last 10 seconds to get in. Room 1.
All right, it looks like they're back.
All right.
All right, who would like to share what your group discussed about what do averages and percents communicate, or what do you notice? What do you wonder about these assignments? Just unmute yourself and share, or write it in the chat.
We were wondering if it was weighted the same, if Miss Fizzle's class plant parts was the same value as Mr. Finn's plant parts, or
It was a straight average. It was.
The other thing that we noticed is that for Zach, he just had to pre-fill out the flower, whereas Keisha actually had to draw it. So it's a different DOK level.
yes.
Absolutely.
It's a great notice.
So are you saying that that 100% and that 80% might not really reflect kind of their true knowledge, that Zach didn't necessarily know more than Keisha? Okay.
Well, I mean, if you're when you're pre-filling something out, it's almost like a mental cue. Oh, wait, I need to remember this because there's a line I need to fill in. So
Right.
I'm obviously forgetting something, but as Keisha, she really had to really understand the parts to be able to draw it from memory
And their
from, like,
location.
understanding. So therefore her DOK level is deeper than Zach's, because Zach is a DOK 1, which is just memory. Whereas with Keisha, it's a deeper DOK because she really had to understand the plant parts to be able to draw it out. So it's more than just memory and regurgitation. So different DOK. At least I see it that way. I mean, I don't.
I think we're probably all in agreement. It might have something to do with why their test scores are so different too, right? Absolutely. Our hypothetical children here.
Right. I really like how you pointed out, Leticia, that that Keisha was given an opportunity to show more of her learning. So, you know, Zach may be able to do that too, but we don't know because we kind of put him, you know, in a box, right? It's like, just fill these out. They're already pre-done for you. You don't have to do much thinking, but we really allowed Keisha to show what she knows. Anyone else with different notices or wonders or what they believe averages and percentages communicate?
Okay. Okay, so that was that's a lot of the rationale for going forward, is that percentage is arbitrary. 100% on an easy assignment, 80% on an assignment that requires more depth. They're not really communicating about the level of learning the student has. And so going with that, we wanted to share with you, this was sent out in the grading memo, this document. It is linked on the slide, but it's really guidance that was written for grade level teams to go through the process of grading together. And there are really 3 steps here. We're going to just cover this step at the beginning, which is that identify essential learning and task to demonstrate learning, but really that identify essential learning, because that is the first step in rubric grading. But know that you have access to this entire document for guidance. We will go through more of it in part 2. It looks like this. I'm going to head back to our presentation. Of course, my controls moved right where I need to click there.
And we will be exploring those second 2 pieces of rubric grading next week in part 2 of this presentation.
So with that identify essential learning tasks to demonstrate learning, what that really means is grade less. So this word narrow is really important, to the most essential learning outcomes. So in this quarter, here are the, maybe for science I have 3 or 4 things that I want students to do, and maybe for, you know, Reading, I might have 7 or 8 things that I think are really important for students to learn. And then I'm not going to grade every assignment I give. I'm going to grade only the things that represent those 7 or 8 learning outcomes, or maybe 10 or 12. Okay? And that's all I'm going to grade. And then I'm going to keep record of the most up-to-date levels of learning. So for instance, if I'm a kindergarten teacher and I know that my expectation is there are 40 of the 52 letters that I want my students to ID by the end of trimester 1, then I'm going to set that expectation and I'm going to check in with my students. They're going to get a 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the letters they've learned. I'm going to update them to the most current. I'm not going to average. So I'm going to average, well, at the beginning, they were a 1 in letters and sounds, and now they're a 3, so I'm going to give them a 2 for their grade in the quarter. We're always updating those. If students weren't writing to a level 3 at the beginning of the quarter, but by the end of the quarter, their writing reflects a 3, then their grade on the report card is a 3. But really the thing we're going to take off of our plate for this is that we're not going to have so many assignments and so many assessments to give and keep track of. It's really important to narrow to just those important outcomes and to agree on those as a team. So for a little practice, we are going to kind of stir your thinking around that. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and then we have an activity to help you out.
All right, so as Stephanie opens that up, you will see linked at the bottom are those first trimester learning outcomes. So we have a list that we created that we thought that there are some things that you can have as your first trimester learning outcomes for kinder, first and second grade, and these are from our grading guidance. By no means these are not exhaustive. You can pick your own, you can choose your own to grade, but we just wanted you to take a little green check mark and copy it and then paste it next to the ones you would use. So each of you take your grade level and look at the reading foundational, reading comprehension, written expression, math, science, social studies, PE, and art, which we'll be grading, and just put a little check mark next to the ones you would use, or you have editing rights. You can go ahead and document and type in something you would use for that.
So again, that's right here in the pink. So if you click on that, it will open up and these samples are here. You can see a couple people getting onto the document here.
And if you're just joining us, I went ahead and put the link in the chat again for the whole presentation. And we are on slide 12, and it's linked at the bottom there.
Oh, I just realized I'm on screen share and everyone sees my screen moving up and down.
Yes, this is our first trimester learning outcomes. So if there's something different on there that you would have as a learning outcome, you can go ahead and type it in, maybe highlight it for us so we know you added it, or add your check mark on there, just to the ones that you will use. And some of these may carry over to trimester 2 with maybe some different expectations.
And so we see lots of, got a lot of kinder teachers here adding a little information to things they can grade. I did want to point out some of these aren't anything that could be counted or really graded. Things like I'm trying to think, self-reflect on your artwork or things like that. cooperates and plays fairly. And so we kind of added this idea, if they do something consistently, it's a 4. If they do it frequently, it's a 3, sometimes and rarely. So that language can be added, you know, as you're thinking of what would be a 4, 3, 2, or 1. And then again, I do just want to show you before we move to the next part here, that this information is in this grading guide as well. So obviously minus the check marks as well as some other information. So with that, I just really kind of want to give you that idea, because this is the first step in the process, is to find those. It's not about the assignment, it's about the outcome, the learning that the student should show. And then you can choose what evidence you're going to collect to see if they learned that. So let's talk about a couple next steps moving forward here.
All right, so our next steps are, if you've kept grades as percentages, then translate, oops, sorry about that, into that 4, 3, 2, or 1. And then make sure you are choosing a small number of outcomes for each heading. Start collecting that evidence for learning outcomes starting now. So if you haven't started this process yet, it's okay. Just go ahead and transfer what you have already done, and then start collecting that evidence, and make sure you give yourself grace, give your students grace. I know it's a difficult situation we're in with trying to really show what students know, and we don't have them right in front of us to assess them, especially our kinders and first grade students that we traditionally have to assess. So again, give yourselves and your teammates grace and really just begin the process.
And if, I know someone had a question last time about those percentages, like if there are things that you're keeping and you're like, well, I didn't grade on a 4, 3, 2, 1, don't think you need to go back and grade. Just talk to your team. Like, are we going to call an 80, 75 to 90% a 3? What do you guys think? If that was the way you were keeping grades, you don't have to undo everything. Just kind of translate it into what you think. Use your best judgment and give grace on those, rather than feeling like you have to start over.
Absolutely. And like Stephanie had mentioned earlier, it's really about choosing what to grade that really shows that that mastery of the standard or potential mastery of that standard. So maybe you have just a couple, CSAs or a test or a project that you're grading. You're not grading every single practice that they do along the way. So day to day, we give them lots and lots of practice. And I know for virtual learning, we are on it, which is great, but you're not necessarily going to grade every single assignment. It's really just those few things that truly show, are they mastering our expectations for math or reading or whatever it may be.
And then I did have a question, and please feel free at this time, we're going to wrap up, but if you have any questions, please ask in the chat or unmute yourself. How do you get Google Classroom to not grade in percentages? I believe you can enter, if you enter your grades as 1, 2, 3, or 4, then you can get that average. So if you're entering 75%, then that's how your grades. But if you enter 1, 2, 3, or 4 into Google Classroom, then it's going to give an average of like a 3.2 or so. And as far as like a form or something, if you make those worth 4 points, then that can happen. And so Brandon added on there, change from a 100% to a 4 for each assignment. Are there any other questions moving forward?
Stephanie, I had a question for you.
Sure.
So in the report card, I took a look at it yesterday, and because it's kinder, it has like how many letters and sounds they should have mastered for the first trimester. Mm-hmm. Are you guys instructing us as a grade level to decide if that's what we're going to stick with? If it said 40 letters, then that's a 4. Well,
remember, mastery would be a 3. So, and that's kind of, we're going to talk about that a little more. So mastery is a 3 because you're meeting expectations. So it'd have to be more than that to exceed expectations.
Okay.
We just wanted to give the parents a target range so they could know. So we do kind of feel like, you know, the units give guidance about how many letters to be introducing. So we do have guidance on that.
Okay.
But we did decide the 3 just so parents could see a number and see whether their student is landing within that range.
Alrighty, thank you.
Uh-huh.
One thing I also noticed, I don't know if anyone else had this issue on Aries, because we're using Aries right now already for progress reports and stuff. When I input the grades from Google Classroom, like the 1, 2, 3, or 4, you have to put all assignments as summative, because if you put some as formative, they won't average the grade out. So I've been having major issues with that. I was wondering like why the grades weren't correct. And it's because you have to put all the assignments in Aries as summative, not formative.
See, and that's why we need innovators like you using Aries, because we don't have students, and what we're finding is there are a lot of settings in Aries that are creating hiccups like that. So thank you. Brandon, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, I was going to say, think of it as when you're closing your grade book, that is a summative report for the students to the parents. So you would want to have it as summative. So Cami is absolutely correct. That just think of it conceptually as this is a summative report to parents, and you're not doing formative assessments, because once they go into the grade book, they're not formative. You're not going to allow them to go back and change them, or you're not going to allow them to retake it. It is the summative assessment or the summative grade.
Okay. And of course, that is if you're choosing to use Aries. And it is nice to have those, some of you out there exploring that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, we wanted to make sure we got you out in time to log on to whatever you have upcoming, but feel free, we'll be on here for about 5 more minutes if you have any other questions. Otherwise, you can fill out the evaluation link for us. And we thank you for being here and hope to see you next week.